Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Maggie.
Hey, Britta and Greg.
Hello.
Hi.
So we have our special guests again. We did this about a half a year ago, right, Mike? Or I can ask all of you, right? Half a year ago. And it was one of our most popular episodes. We were just discussing this before we started recording. One of our most top 10 episodes of 2021 was when we brought both of you on and did a mid-year expense review. So we thought, well, we should do a full year expense review, see how we ended the year, see what our families all spend for a whole year. And mostly Mike and Britta can critique what Greg and I spend.
I'm looking forward to being critiqued.
Yeah, you say that jokingly, but we can see your expenses in our show notes, and you guys did a pretty good job.
Well, I'm not sure I would word it as we did a pretty good job. You guys had an abnormally high spending year for what you typically come in at.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, fair point.
I don't want to ruin this.
Wait, so are you saying that we did as terrible of a job as you guys did this year?
I was like not accepting your compliment of us. I was like, I'm not sure that we did a good job. It's more that you guys just spent higher and so we look better, but we're not actually.
Yeah, and once you guys don't have daycare expenses, there's really going to be like no comparison. But
fair point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get into all that. We're teasing everybody with this. So
we are big proponents of tracking expenses. We talk about it on a lot of our episodes. We have our Excel expense tracker, which we have on our Etsy store. And we talk about the benefits of what gets measured gets better. And we believe that if you are tracking all of your expenses and having discussions and reviewing things and making decisions, that you will be able to improve your personal finances. And the side benefit of all this is that over time you can reduce your living expenses, which increases your savings rate, and it gets you closer to a date of financial independence.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about a lot too is I actually think tracking your expenses is more important than budgeting in many ways.
I totally agree.
Not in many ways, in all ways. I think you get a lot more.
Are you sure there's not one way that it's better?
We did a whole episode. I'll put it in the show notes on budgeting versus expense tracking. So there are some reasons why budgeting can be important, like particularly if you need to live on a budget. But I think tracking your expenses along with the net worth power duo of like, if you could see me, I got my two fists up, the power duo of like, bam, track your expenses, bam, track your net worth. And you're like, fire.
Just so you know, I'm not going to put in extra sound effects. We're just going to leave your.
Okay. Thanks. And just so you know, I'm 100% sober right now. Let's keep going. We've talked about this before. We'll do this quickly, but just to give you a little bit of background in case you didn't listen to the last episode where we did a expenses review. Mike and Britta, you guys track your expenses pretty manually. Like you keep receipts, you log them into an Excel sheet. We use Mint. So just to give you a bit of the how, right? We use Mint and we track everything in there, like keep all our credit cards and stuff. And then every few months we kind of clean it up in real time. We go through and do like kind of a pivot table and like, run our summaries out of Mint basically. So different approaches. And I think like with all of this, we care less about how you do it and more, we just think it's really important to actually track your expenses. And again, there's a lot of value that comes out of that.
And quick funny story. So as Maggie mentioned, we track all of our expenses manually. So I have an Excel spreadsheet. Every single receipt I will type in and categorize the expenses and type in the amount. And we use Evernote and we scan receipts and then upload them to the cloud. And Britta's great about this. Like she holds onto her receipts and then scans them in batches for me to update our paperwork pretty regularly. But there was this one time where she was like in the parking lot of some store after a purchase. And when you scan with the app, it does like an optical character recognition.
Yeah, you have to tell it you want a photo and not the auto thing.
It scans it, but then like just scans the receipt and nothing else, and you can read the text. And I was going through, and there was like a picture, just like a full picture of a little tiny receipt on Britta's lap, and you could see her legs and the car. And I was just like, "What the hell is this?" And I didn't realize that it was a receipt.
I was trying to be diligent and upload all my receipts for him on time to track. So
I know you made in the right format, though.
I know you made fun of me, but overall, I did the job.
Yeah, you did. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It sounds like Mike thought he was getting like a shot of her legs, like just a little like.
Yeah, maybe she was trying to give you a little extra with the receipt.
No kidding.
Cost extra.
Like a little bonus for you. Okay. I like how Britta's like, I was just trying to get him in on time. Like there's a deadline for getting her receipts into the CFO.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think there is probably a deadline, and I don't want to know what happens if you miss the deadline, because when I'm like 30 seconds late to a podcast is not good. So, which basically is every podcast. So whatever. Okay. Let's keep moving.
To get into some of these numbers, just a couple more caveats. We are not going to be talking about any of our income. This is purely just our expenses. The income we kind of capture in the net worth chart exercise. That's more of like growing your wealth. This is really about looking at where you spend your money and then evaluating those spend decisions after the fact.
And as a reminder, also, I think our last bit of context, we all, like collectively, both of our families have paid off our mortgages. So you're not going to see high housing costs from us. And so definitely, something I guess somewhat unique about our financial situations. And then for Greg and I, we've not included our child support number in here because it's nothing that we can control. And just for privacy reasons, we don't include it. But this is everything else that both of our families spend, all of it.
And excludes all of our rental business
that's
expenses.
I thought that was like a child coming in, and then I realized that is a cat.
Yeah.
Like the door was moving and I was like, someone is trying. And there's two cats. There's a second one. The cats never come in, by the way, when Mike's recording.
They like me better.
They're coming after Britta. I see both of them in there and they're like, wait a minute. She's not usually down here recording. What is going on? Okay. Do you guys want to go first or?
Sure. All right. We are going to start with the total. Drum roll. Greg, give us a drum roll. No, that's not a drum, Megan.
It's drum roll. You're like shaking everything in here.
Our total expenses for 2021, $78,546.
Did you get the pennies? Do you keep your decimals or?
The decimals are in here, just not in this spreadsheet that I can see right now.
I mean, I counted down to the penny, whatever, Mike. just kidding.
All right, what's your total?
Okay, so 78,000.
Yeah, round it up. Let's call it 79,000.
Okay, 79,000. That's solid. That is. What was yours last year, Mike?
Last year we spent 60,000.
Okay. The only reason I asked that is back to our points earlier where people may think we were joking. I really was saying this was I've always been impressed at kind of awed at how low you guys are able to keep your expenses, especially compared to your quality of life and like what you do and how you live. And so again, I'm not knocking this year at all. This is why I think it's so interesting to talk through this. Like there's very specific, legitimate reasons why you're higher than you were last year. And they were, prioritized choices you guys made, which I'm sure you'll talk us through right now. But I just think that the important thing about like, even though we will sometimes kind of, Mike and I will competitively like joke about things joke competitive. Is it competitively joke? Whatever.
I said joke competitively.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not like having like a joke off here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because competitive joking would be competition of joking.
We will jokingly be competitive. It's not a real competition. I think, that we always talk about it. The spirit and why we started this podcast in the first place is we believe there's value in friends having open financial discussions. So it's not about like whose number is lower or higher. It's about like what you can learn from each other and just the interesting discussions that come from the insights and discussions that come from being open and sharing these numbers with each other. So, okay. So what went into that 79,000? You want to like hit your top categories?
Yeah, sure. So we had two big categories, which we were not expecting to have. So if you are a regular listener to the show and you were keeping track of our goals for the year, our spending goal, I wanted to reduce expenses by 15% on the year, and in fact increased our expenses, but it was for kind of two legitimate reasons. The first was that we replaced our carpet on the second floor with wood floors, and then also had like a water heater that needed to be replaced. And so we spent $15,000 on home improvement projects this year, which we were not anticipating to do, but they were worthwhile expenses. We feel very good about them. So we kind of threw out the goal when we decided to do this because it was worthwhile.
Yeah, which is okay.
Yeah. The other big category was daycare. And our kids are not in daycare. They're in public school now. And so this was hopefully going to be zero when we started the year. But schools were not in person. They were virtual. And so we sent our kids back to the daycare that they were at when they were younger, because they had a program that was like virtual schooling, and it was instructor led, and it was like a much better situation for them and us. And so we spent a little under $13,000 for daycare, another unanticipated expense.
Yeah, and I was going to make a comment that you probably won't have that expense this year, but I think we might be speaking too soon because it's hard to tell what's going to happen with.
It really is deja vu, because it was this time last year that all of this stuff was happening, and we're right back where we started.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I was just saying to Greg on mute while you were talking, I was like, wait, I thought we weren't at all virtual for all of 2021. It's just the time is like running together for the past 2 years. And he was like, no, the kids started virtual. We didn't go back until it's funny how much I think like, oh, it feels like it's been over a year now that we've been back in school, and it actually hasn't. And we haven't even stayed in for a whole year. So, okay. What was after daycare?
So next up was groceries for $7,000, and then travel for $6,700. And this one I think is interesting. And Maggie and Greg, maybe we can spend some time talking about the similarities and differences between our two expenses in this category. But Britt and I were talking about this earlier, and we spent a total of about 8 weeks traveling this year. And the reason it was so low in cost is because we basically did a lot of points and stayed at friends' places or stayed with in-laws, and just had a very reasonable level of expense, but had a great time and were away for a long time.
Your travel budget overall was very, very impressive considering how many weeks you were traveling, right? And again, to your point, there was some kind of, I don't know if creative is the right word, but thoughtful approaches to, where you were staying and when you were paying for lodging and different things and all that. And I think we had a mix of that in ours too. But our travel budget, which we'll get into, was much higher than yours. So, I mean, you guys you're a higher color belt than I am in travel hacking.
Yeah. And I think what's important to add too, it's obviously travel is not at home, but we flew pretty much for almost every single trip. So we flew to Colorado, we flew to Europe. So there's a lot of long distance flying involved. And like Mike said, we were lucky to use a lot of points for that. To really cut costs.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And you guys are getting on this journey. So like your summer travel for next year has been booked on points. And so I would anticipate that your travel expenses next year, maybe if we look at like, you're making a face as though this is not going to be the case. I'll
tell you why.
But I think if we were to look at, and this goes back to a conversation we had a few episodes ago, if we were to look at a cost per day for your family to travel this year versus next year, I think we're going to see a dramatic improvement next year because you are utilizing points to a much better degree.
Yeah, I don't think you will. I like your theory because it sounds good, but we have some big plans, which we'll talk more about on a future show, but we've got some big plans next summer. And while we did hack our flights, I do think like if you look at when we talk about our travel budget, a lot of those flights were semi-hacked also, and we still spent a lot. So I think our just style and approach to travel is still like cheaper than many, but not as lean as you guys are able to keep it.
Yeah, I mean, even this past year, I think the only flights we purchased were when we took the family to St. Thomas.
Well, we purchased flights, but we did like companion tickets. So we were buying one flight, not the
Yeah, that's
other.
true.
And like,
Yeah.
so, and we also flew almost everywhere we went except for one driving trip.
Yeah.
But it was just, we can break it down when we get to it. Okay. So travel was a big one. Again,
It's all relative.
we can compare. Yeah, it's all relative. And then like hit your next few because I think it's helpful.
The next one is going to be what we categorize as kids activities for 6,000, and this is things like gymnastics and tennis camp and swim camp and all that sort of stuff. It is non-daycare but child activities.
Hey, let me ask you a question. When you if you take the kids to like botanical gardens or trampoline park or something, will you log that under kids activities?
No.
Okay, so this is more formal, like camps and like, they're in gymnastics or, okay, like activity fees. Okay, got it.
Correct.
What would a trip to the botanical gardens be categorized under? Just general entertainment?
Other?
Or
I'm looking at your categories. Other?
Yeah, we just put it in other. We have so few of those expenses that I don't even bother breaking it out.
Well, it's funny to your point of you don't even bother breaking it out. Your next biggest category is other, which so it's there's a lot of like you're really good at keeping like a tight category list. And we keep kind of more granular categories in many ways. And so we don't have a big other miscellaneous, but it's also a little bit of a bear to like, summarize our expenses, which again is, I'm like we talk about at the beginning, I less care how people do it and more that they do it. Because I think there's value to be gained, whether you like a tight list of categories, whether you want to have 40 categories, whatever you want to do, like you're going to get some value out of this process, I believe.
Yeah, and I would say that if you start tracking your expenses and your quote unquote other category is $50,000, you need to get a little more granular because you're never going to be able to understand where your money's going and make improvements if you have such a large kind of nebulous bucket of money. On ours, when we have $6,000 of other expenses, there's nothing in here, any particular category that's like over $500. So it's not like I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to shave off $50 of spending in some particular category.
And it's less than 10% of your overall spending too.
Yep.
So I think that is a percentage is helpful.
Yeah.
Well, he did suggest breaking out Starbucks coffee, but
Was that
I
a dig at
vetoed
you?
that.
Because he wanted to.
I have it as a subcategory. So if we were to expand this pivot table, I'd be able to tell you how
He's
much we
watching
spend
you.
at Starbucks.
Yeah. He's like,
That's
I can
right.
tell you. He probably knows in his head exactly what is spent on Starbucks.
Yeah.
I did cut back on Starbucks expenses after I got you went 3 times this month?
Oh, this month? I thought he was going to say this week.
No.
I'd be good with your 3 times a month.
So all of our other categories are pretty small. What I look at here is if I take away the home improvement and daycare expenses, which are kind of a large one-time expense and an unforeseen expense, which we should no longer have, our cost of living was just under $51,000, which seems quite reasonable for our lifestyle and our, the volume of activities and travel we have.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think just kudos to you guys. Just you do a really good job of keeping your spending lean while still enjoying your life, right? And not, I think from the outside, nobody would look at your lifestyle and think like, wow, they're really, what's the opposite of splurging?
Frugal.
Well, not even frugal, but like they're really limiting themselves. They really aren't living as a result of this,
I don't know. I think if anybody sees me driving my car, they're like, man,
Well,
that poor guy.
Your car is a whole nother category. You'll notice there's nothing about cars in your top expenses because it doesn't cost a lot to keep that puppy running,
In fact, it's our lowest category at $463.
Yeah. That's just you pouring new oil into it every 5 minutes as it falls out the bottom.
It was my car because the heat was broken and we decided that we want to keep one car running correctly. And I think it was about $350 to get that fixed.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of disappointed
that was
in
actually,
you guys.
You're disappointed in us?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like to be true devotees of this lifestyle, you just gotta. Just get
You mean an extra jacket would do in the car?
Yeah.
Well, Greg, it's funny. Like Britta and I had a serious conversation. We were like, could we really, as a family, go without heat during the winter in our car? And we talked about it, and we were just like, it's not worth it. It's just let's just pay $350 and have like a normal car.
Yeah.
Let's add. We would have never spent that on Mike's car.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, well, it's not worth
the-
it. I mean, you don't spend more to fix the heat than you do of the car's worth. That's just silly.
Yeah, and I'm totally kidding, by the way. I mean, and this is where Maggie and I get into like, when it first turns winter, Maggie's like, let me just see how long I can hold out without turning the heat on. And I'm like, to an extent, I'm okay. When it starts getting into the 40s, I'm just like,
Well, it's 40s outside, not in our house, to be clear.
okay,
it's only
getting
60s
down
in
into
our
the
house.
like low 60s. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, let's just run some heat. We don't need to like crank it really high, but just some base level of heat is important.
What's funny is you notice it. The kids complain about being hot in the summer. They want more AC. They do not even notice the temperature when it gets cold. Like they've been virtual schooling and they've been downstairs, and I don't turn the heat on downstairs. Nobody has once said a word this week about the temperature down here. It's like they just have no concept of cold
they're
weather.
like impervious to the cold.
Yeah.
Or they
They
know
will-
that that's just a non-negotiable.
You're
That
right.
could
No,
be, yeah.
they don't because they complain a lot about the heat. They complain a lot about wanting more air
I think
conditioning.
it's called learned helplessness.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly a good thing, but
All right, let's hear your numbers.
Okay. So our total, I'm going to round up like you did, but $81,656. So it's funny how close we were. But again, just like mid-year, close, but on very different things, which just goes to show every family is different. So that was, just to put it in context, that actually was $20,000 less than what we spent in 2020. I had to go like dig it up.
Congratulations. Impressive.
Yeah, thanks. So that was a good turn. And it's funny because at first we had at the mid-year, we were at 32,000. I don't know if you remember. And so I was like, ooh, we're going to be able to get a like $70,000 a year. This is exciting. This is closer to where you guys have been. And I was like, wow, I'm at my idle spend, and then my financial idle, to be clear. And then I went back and looked at last year and I was like, oh, well, I feel like that just compared to last year, like we're down, 19, 20%. Like that's amazing. So anyways, we were generally like very happy when we, it's like you're unhappy when you realize how far off it is from your mid-year spend, but then when you realize how much better it is than 2020, feels good. Okay. So we had a lot of things that kind of went into this. So number one, just like mid-year, our number one expense is travel. So we spent $17,216 on travel. And just to give a sense of that, like, we got a lot in with that, right? So similar to your like 8 weeks, I had to kind of reminisce on that. We spent 2 weeks in St. Thomas. We spent a week and a half in Hawaii. We spent close to a week and a half in Costa Rica. I did spend a week in Colorado with my friends, just on a girls' trip. We did a long weekend in DC with one of our kids. We did a long week in LA with another one of our kids. So there was only one trip we did that was actually like a driving trip. When I think about, like travel hacking, you're right, Greg, what you said earlier. We didn't spend a lot. We spent like almost $4,500 on flights to St. Thomas. Because no travel hacking, we just had to buy 5 tickets and there was not a lot of options. And flight prices, I don't know if everyone remember, but there were not like a lot of great, amazing deals for a while because just there was less inventory and
we were going to
demand.
visit my mom. So it's not like we just picked a destination and said, oh, we're going to go here and pay top dollar to get there. I mean, there was a reason.
Yeah, we hadn't seen your mom in a long time.
So it's not like, I think we want to move more towards where we say, well, we have a sort of a destination in mind, but let's figure out what's cheapest. And if
we went,
one place is cheaper than this, maybe we go here. But in this case, we kind of had a place locked in and we had a time period we kind of had to fit. So we just kind of had to pay whatever the going price was.
That's a great point too. When we did Hawaii and Costa Rica, we chose those locations because there were great flight deals to those places. And anyways, so that was a big chunk of that. Also, I did, just because I think this is interesting, I took a page out of, I think, your book, Mike, because we had some like big credit card fees as part of some travel hacking we were doing. And we put our travel hacking fees in the travel category so that they show up in there. So I mean, we had like, I don't know, over $1,500, almost 15. Well, yeah, over $1,500 in different credit card fees. But we also got, flights for next summer that we paid almost nothing for. So anyways, there's a bunch of accommodations in there. And even though we had a free place to stay in St. Thomas, we still spent a decent amount of money while we were there.
And that includes all of our food when we're traveling too. So I don't know if that's how you guys track it, but we've made that decision too, that when we're traveling, restaurants, groceries, everything goes into there. So just a caveat.
Yeah, because that definitely adds to
I mean, this number is still pretty impressive considering the amount and style of travel you do. It is not uncommon for people to spend as much as you spend in a full year on a single trip. Because if you stay in a luxury hotel and you get convenient flights and you're going out to restaurants and doing activities, like you could very easily spend this amount. And
that is a great point.
And I think it's also important to know, like we spent $7,000. You guys spent $17,000. We would spend $50,000 if we needed to have this, because it is like one of the most important elements of our lives. And so there are alternatives which allow us to do things less expensively, but we are in no way depriving ourselves of these experiences. And we would go do this stuff anyway. And I think that's a very important message to get through to people, that it is important and we will spend money on it. We don't have to, though.
Yeah. I think, by the way, depriving is the word that I couldn't think of that was the opposite of splurging. You're not depriving yourself. And yeah, I agree. I am like proud that travel is our number one expense category. It is in line with what matters to us. And it feels good. Like I'm not upset about spending $17,000 a year on travel. Our next category is groceries at $7,000. And I was going to say it's like, almost identical to your grocery budget, but like Greg just said, when we are traveling, we don't there's some groceries from when we were traveling, not that much, honestly. And then our next biggest category is electronics and software, which was $5,565. And that was a big one because we both bought laptops this year. I had not bought a laptop in, 10 plus years, a long time, because I've always just had my work laptop for a really long time. And I finally bought a personal laptop, and you needed a new laptop, and you bought a new Apple Watch, which he really makes you like happy on a day-to-day basis. He's always showing me things about it. And
hey Maggie, check out my new watch.
He's always like, look at this, because it checks like his oxygen level.
Look at my oxygen level. My resting heart rate's really low right now.
He's like, I'm still alive. Look at my.
So that lowered your medical expenses, hopefully.
No,
theoretically, maybe.
Theoretically, but wait till we get to medical, which probably are actually mostly my expenses. So. Okay, but yeah, electronics and software, 2 laptops, an Apple Watch, a few other things in there that I all of a sudden can't remember. My drone was even in there. And our TV broke. So we had so similar to travel, there's like a lot of crap in there for $5,565. 2 laptops, a new TV, 1 Apple Watch, and a drone, and a partridge in a pear tree. Okay, next category. I got like, excuses and reasons for all my spend. Health and fitness, $5,415. Also, it's funny, travel, electronics, health and fitness, all in line with what matters to us and what we care about. And so health and fitness was our treadmill broke, and we bought a new treadmill, and we bought a pretty, I think it's fair to say like a high-end treadmill. And so that was the bulk of that. And then there was a little bit of some other things in there, like therapy, just, odds and ends.
Yeah, I think like health, fitness, and wellness is probably a better way to encapsulate everything that's in there. Because we did some therapy stuff and some things related to the kids with therapy, and just things that we were trying to, as parents, figure out various situations, and that's in there. So it is not just like we're out. We don't have 5 memberships.
We have 0 gym. We have no gym memberships. Yeah. What is in there that I was just laughing at when I looked at the detail? There's a couple of orders of face masks from various companies. And I was just laughing because that's like a unique expense these days that I
So
under health.
how much is a high-end treadmill? I've never bought a treadmill.
This
curious.
treadmill was, we bought a Nordic Track one, and it was $3,481, which again is not the highest end. I mean, you could buy a Peloton one and spend, like 10 grand.
I like how you justify that expense immediately.
Oh yeah, I like to put it all in perspective.
Right.
Yeah, and this one's great. I mean, it does the workout for you. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, you don't actually have to
but
get
you
on
still
the
get
treadmill.
The benefit of it. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's great. It just runs for you, like Greg
It comes
said.
with
Watch
a
TV.
trainer that runs for you, and you just watch
Yeah,
him.
exactly.
You know what's funny is our kids have been using the treadmill lately. Like when they're when they're home, sometimes like we make them like go for a walk around the block or do something. And when the weather's bad, they'll go on the treadmill. So I mean, like the whole family's using it.
Yeah.
Everybody's. I will say, even on our previous treadmill, which I had our old treadmill I bought over 10 years ago, and it had a very nice life. I think even close to 15 years actually. And so I expect and hope that we'll have this treadmill for a very long time. Okay, our next biggest category was our property taxes, which is like $5,245. After that was home improvements, $4,883. Then we had medical, $3,989. Next one was restaurants. And then we get into like utilities, charity, kids expenses. And then we get into like real small categorizations that you guys don't do of like our clothing, kids clothing.
Parking for $61.
Parking. Yep.
Christmas gifts. Yeah.
Christmas gifts. Yeah. We itemize, so yeah, it goes, there's a long tail of some categories after that, right? We even have alcohol and bars separated from restaurants.
Actually, what are Christmas givers?
That is just Christmas gifts misspelled.
That's a new category, though. I'm more curious about this word.
Giffers. Yeah. It's a special thing we do where I'm from,
That's what I
which
thought.
is Atlanta. We giffer people. It's a Southern thing. Santa brings giffers. I'm trying to think like what's in here. Hey, the things let's hit like back and forth in whatever order we'd like. The things we're most proud of that we really like buckle, tighten down and just feel good about that we haven't already mentioned.
I think we are most proud of our travel for the reasons we described earlier.
Stated.
It was just a lot and great travel. I mean, these were superb trips and it didn't cost a lot of money.
Yeah, it's impressive. I'll second you guys there. That's awesome.
Another thing I'm very proud of was Mike's birthday present that I got him. And I got Mike a treadmill for his birthday, and it was free.
Was it off the Buy Nothing group?
Yeah, yes-ish. That's where I advertised, but it was a friend that then told me they don't use it, and was a very high-end one like 5 years ago. They haven't used it in a while. It's been working great.
And they were like,
that's
just
generous. I think it was
take
like 15 years ago.
It still works great though.
Yeah,
I mean,
amazing.
it's amazing. And I think that was like my biggest accomplishment because I was actually ready to, I think I set my budget at like $150 and I was like, free? Yes.
I love it. I set my budget at like 5,000. Like I was willing to go a little higher. I was looking at the Peloton. The Pelotons were recalled.
Yeah.
And so I was literally Peloton refused to sell me a treadmill at the time we needed one, which was probably for the best.
You should write them a letter how upset you were about that.
Maggie was like, I'll pay extra. Just
I was
send
like,
me this thing.
I was like, I'm
They were
fine with
no.
the recall. I don't have little kids. I'm good. I'm fine. Okay. One thing I'm proud of is my one haircut Greg's had 0 and I've had 1 haircut and color. And if you'll notice, my hair is getting very long and unwieldy. Maybe on the screen, you can't get the full effect, but I really need a haircut. It's bothering me.
She's basically got dreadlocks at this point.
There's
Hold
always
down.
the messy bun. You see my messy bun that you
That's
can
what
go
I
with?
do.
Yeah.
I rock the messy bun 99% of my day. I happen to have recently showered, so.
My daughter, speaking of the subject of my hair getting longer, my daughter today just said, Dad, if you grow your hair out any longer, just promise me you're not going to put it in a man bun. She's like, you're just too old for that. I was like, okay.
Did Maddie say that? What's funny, Maddie has been saying she's 13 and she has been saying the funniest things lately. Like the
She's got a
most
good sense of
witty,
humor.
like kind of subtle, like a little I just am like, it's just laugh out loud anyways. Okay. What else? What are you feeling good about?
I mean, I guess everything, we're a little bit further along on this kind of like practice of tracking expenses. Like I started doing this in January of 2014. And so we've been doing these reviews regularly for a long time. And so we're pretty efficient, and I think just generally proud of where we are in our lifestyle. These numbers year to year are pretty consistent in all of these categories. It's just kind of like unique one-off expenses that will throw something way up or keep it low.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not as far along as you are in terms of how long I've been tracking our expenses, but I still overall, like back to the comparison to last year and this year, and just at our overall earning rate, like the volume that we are able to save and that we are saving versus what we're spending, we certainly still splurge. And there's, for example, stuff that we'll spend money on that I know is not a priority to you guys. But I still feel like really good about, just as we were reviewing this, I think if you would agree, Greg, you better agree. I think we're just generally like feeling good about it. Definitely some areas of opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think what's been kind of cool about this for me, the thing I'm like, what I'm excited about is doing this. I was like, let's capitalize on the fact that we just figured out, our year-end expenses for 2021, and let's use this to help set budgets for 2022, and kind of goes into that, budgeting versus expense tracking. And, so we're starting to switch from Mint to Quicken. And
which Greg is, by the way, like nerding out on Quicken right now.
Yeah.
And we're like 90% doing it for our rental properties, but it comes with a lot of cool benefits for our personal expense tracking also. And it lets you separate out any LLCs into like multiple businesses. But he is like, you just started it last week when we were on break, and he was like, I mean, he's been spending like hours getting things set up, and he just like is so, I can't describe to you the level of excitement. He'll act like he has something really important to ask me, and then he's like, I need to know something. And it's something about how he's setting things up in Quicken.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it just because I think it's gonna like empower us to get our expenses down even more, or just be more cognizant of it. Because I still think, we do pretty good. But there's still months where we're not really looking at what we're spending. I mean, we're kind of mentally saying, I guess we've gone out a few times this month, and
then we're like, oh crap, we spent $300 eating out this month, and we're in the third week, and it just sort of slipped by us. And had I seen that number in my face every day, I might have been like, I don't really need to eat out today,
Yeah.
Or how did this $4,000 treadmill get in our basement? I didn't see that one coming.
It was only a $3,400.
Oh, sorry.
And that's with tax.
That included the white glove delivery too.
Oh my God.
They didn't really wear white gloves, but
I was disappointed.
It was still pretty fancy. They were wearing tuxedos, so that was nice.
So, and actually that thing was a heavy mess. It took, those two guys actually acted like they wouldn't even bring it to our basement. They were like, this is not included. And I was like, yes, it is. Get this thing down here. Okay. Anyways, the things I would say to your point though, if I was like if I had a number like reminding me every day, the things I could get better at and plan to get better at in 2022, whatever year we're in, is clothing and all those little like things that just like ad hoc junk that adds up of just kind of spending, like miscellaneous shopping and spending and different things like that. I think there's a few thousand easily of just things that in no way added meaningful happiness to my life, but that just were like stressful decisions and, purchases that were kind of made on a whim that were just not needed. And I couldn't even like, as I look at the detailed line items, like I can break down each of these categories in my pivot table. And there's just stuff where I'm like, oh, forgot I even bought that. Didn't, you know what I mean? Like, just doesn't in any way do anything for me today.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment because it's not a lot of money. And I think you and other people might say like, why would I even bother? It's like $1,000 on the year. Why would I spend time thinking about it? But to your point, it doesn't do anything for you. And so like, just work to get rid of it because it's not really bad.
Well, yeah. And that's like our whole thing that we talk about so much on here is none of this around tracking your expenses or budgeting or anything is meant to deprive you of things that matter to you, right? It's to prioritize and make trade-offs in life. Like, for example, we care about getting our cost of living down because we want to retire early and we want to still be able to travel and we want to be able to give our, kids what they need for college and everything else. What we don't care about is a lot of like physical objects, and like our couch is really old and we could use a new couch, and like it's not high on our list to replace that couch, right? Now a treadmill, it is high on my list to replace because I work out actively. I run 3 days a week. When the weather's crappy, I run inside 3 days a week and I use it and I get value from it and it like makes me happy. So it's just the idea of, I think, getting your spending to be very intentional and aligned with your priorities and, making those trade-offs.
Well, even like restaurants is one that we've budgeted to decrease next year.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, Mike, of like, does it bring value? I mean, there are times when going out to a restaurant is really nice. You have a nice restaurant, you really enjoy it. And then there's those midweek times where you're like, oh, I don't really feel like cooking, so we'll just get takeout. And you're thinking about work or your kids and you're not even really enjoying it. And had you just spent 15 minutes whipping something up in the kitchen, you would have been just as happy and spent maybe 1/10 the amount you spent getting that takeout. And those are the kinds of things where, we want to challenge ourselves to say, let's do fewer of those like takeout orders, just out of sort of, I don't know if laziness is the right word, but just,
short term.
Yeah. And then but we're still going to really enjoy going out to some restaurants when it's meaningful and when we really want to enjoy it. So it's those little things of, cutting out the stuff that really makes no, impact on
lasting happiness, right? Yeah. Like when I eat out, like you're talking about, it has a short-term dopamine hit, just like buying something does, right? But a week later, I'm not like, oh, my week was better because we went to Yumby on Wednesday, But I do think my week was better because I got in a few good workouts and because I meditated, whatever. Okay, you get the idea. Hey, what's kind of funny is we've been in the past week, because we've just been reviewing all of this for 2021, we've been very intentional about our goals for 2022 and probably had like more detailed discussions than we typically do. And it is January 6th when we're recording this episode. So this won't air for another week or two. I have already been hit with some very large unexpected expenses that are almost like comical, from like rats getting in my car and eating through a seatbelt that's costing me $500 to replace, to a tire blowout on 400, to I made the decision and got like another opinion on some TMJ issues. And like, I've literally spent within the next week, I will have spent like $6,500 on these two things, on my car and on my jaw.
So no Yumby for you.
No eating out, no clothing, nothing for me. And I'm not even gonna be able to get my hair cut. I'm actually gonna need to see
you have 11 months to find that money and save it.
I have 11 months to, what's fascinating though, that's just sort of a fun story. Mike, we're going to talk on a future episode about some of our travel hacking goals this year. So we'll save that. But today I was able to convince a car dealership to not charge me today a fairly large bill, over $1,000, and wait to charge me in a few days when my credit card arrives in the mail.
Nice.
Because I'm trying to get, and I was like, I'm really trying to hit this spend mode. I was like, I'm good for it. You can write down this other credit card number. Like, I'm going to call you back in 2 days. If I don't, like, feel free to run it on the, and he was like, this is a very unorthodox request, but I think you're good for it. And I'm fine to wait until like Monday to, and I was like, yeah, and feel free to write down my, he wrote down my Amex number as a backup. And I'm like, yeah, no, if you never hear from me again, like, feel free to, run it on this. But I was like, but you'll hear from me. Anyways, my point is,
I could just picture you like going just like full context on this. Be like, and I'm going to use this card to go buy a ticket to Europe. Let me tell you about my flight plan that I've already picked out.
Well, I did tell him that we had a little points competition going this year. I didn't get into the details. And I think he just at some point was like,
he's just like, leave me alone.
Right. I think eventually he was just like, this lady needs to leave me alone. Like I'll just say yes to whatever she wants.
Yeah,
I think many words flying at me. I'm just okay.
I think he was like, what is it going to take for you to leave my office right now?
Right.
And I was like, this is all it's going to take, sir. And then I told him I would leave him a really good review. The dealers like really care about those reviews. And he was like really thankful. He was like, yeah, those matter so much. And I was
So
like,
have you done it yet?
well, I haven't gotten it. I like just left
Oh, okay.
2 hours ago.
Gotta do it.
It's not been that long. I haven't gotten the invite for it yet. But I will be leaving him a very nice review where I will not mention that he's delaying charging me for the new tires and everything. Okay. Anyways, as usual, I'm not sure what got me off on that tangent other than 2022 is off to a little bit of a rough start in our household in terms of spending. So we're going to have to really buckle down.
But I'm really excited to document it in Quicken.
Yeah. Greg can't wait for those to come
Right.
through.
I think you should make an extra category for that. You have enough time. Maggie's miscellaneous January 2022 expenses.
Yes. Yeah.
Maggie's unexpected
Then-
2022.
Yeah, then we won't be. If you could just do a rodent category between this and some squirrels at a rental property, it's like there's a lot being spent on rodent. I'm very unhappy with rodents right now.
Yeah, can we like break them out into categories?
Yeah, what type of rodent expenses do you
rats,
have?
squirrels.
Rats, squirrels.
Yeah, and I got to decide: is that a separate category or is it a rodent category with a different tag?
Right.
So many options of how
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, so much Quicken, so little time.
All right, let's wrap this one up.
Wrap this up. We got some takeaways, right?
Do we?
Top 3 takeaways. We're back to we do.
Oh, yeah.
We're back. We're
Oh,
back
yeah.
to like
Okay, top 3 takeaways. I'll start, Maggie. Ooh, you know what? Let's have Britta and Greg do them.
I was gonna say, yeah, let's have our other halves.
Yeah, why am I stealing all of the thunder here?
Yeah.
Britta, why don't you do
Ladies first.
Number
Go
1.
ahead, Britta.
All right. First takeaway. It's an important investment in your finances and relationships to track and review expenses with your spouse.
Yeah, do you agree with that statement, Britta?
I do agree, but I'm also happy that I'm not doing the bulk work on it. I gotta admit that.
You like just submitting your receipts. I kind of agree. Greg's so excited about Quicken and he's been handling all of our categorization. I kind of like being like a co-pilot and saying like, yeah, you take the reins. You let me know what you need.
Yeah, you two are great spouses. You are letting your husbands pursue their passions of keeping track of credit card expenses.
Exactly. It's a good way of
to
saying
put it, Mike.
yeah.
I don't think that even needs to be elaborated on. That was perfectly said.
All right, Greg, number 2.
All right, takeaway number 2. There's no perfect way to do this, and as we said earlier, I mean, you can be as high level or as detailed as you wanted. There's no perfect way to categorize it. I think it's really what works for you and what gets you to make meaningful changes in your life. And as this says, it's called personal finance for a reason because it's very personal.
I like it.
Feel free to just take that out.
We're going to edit both of you out.
please
Just
do.
kidding. I think we should try to say number 3 in unison so that it's really, let's just do it. 1, 2, 3.
It
can be fun and helpful to review and discuss with
other
family.
family.
Mike's punching me during the editing process right now. Okay. But I was kind of being silly because we are reviewing this with another family. And I think it's true. Like back to the whole point and premise of this, why we started this podcast. I think a lot of value can come out of seeing what other people spend on things. So I find it fascinating when we will both share our expense reviews with each other. And they're different in many ways, but like we look at certain things like groceries and utilities and other things. And I'm like, hey, if we're like right on those categories, which is fascinating. We live in similar size houses in a similar kind of cost of living area. And I know how frugal you guys are, or lean even, because frugal sometimes I think has like negative implications. I don't think it does. Some people think that word does. But I just think I know how good you guys are. So when I see that we're spending about the same as you, I'm like, oh, we're doing awesome. Because they've gotten to like, this has become a science for them. So I feel like we've hit a good point. So anyways, I think it can be really valuable to review this with other friends and family as you do your own expense tracking.
Well, yeah, even preparing for the conversation, is good. As we knew this was coming up, makes you dig in a little. It makes you kind of think about, well, why did we do this? And,
what did we spend $17,000?
It's just a really good year-end review sort of process. And I think learning from each other has been good. Yeah,
there's some like accountability partners in like, I'm like, I know we're going to have to explain this $3,500 treadmill to Britta and Mike. And we better have a good, we really should have done this from the treadmill where we were like on it. You could see how great it is.
Well, you also immediately started justifying the expense without us even asking.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Britta,
Well, it's because you got a free one. So I was like really feeling a little self-conscious about it.
I think when you grilled Maggie, I don't know if you remember on the 6-month episode, you had some pretty like
choice words.
Well, some like, you just cut to the issue on some of the questions about Maggie's clothes and why she did it. And I remember even after, like, you were like,
I was crying. Were you gonna say I was crying?
You were crying, yeah. When you went and burned you burned your whole wardrobe. No, but I think it was thought provoking.
Yeah, it was thought provoking as a good word. It challenged me is a good word. It made me think more hard about. Again, some of these things were like, historically, I was always somewhat frugal, but I also spent somewhat frivolously in certain categories on certain things because I was like, well, I have the money, right? I didn't have an end goal at the time. I just was like, I make good money. I can buy this stuff, right? And I think the more I started to have a stronger end goal in mind, the more I was like, okay, I see the value in like, is this stuff bringing me happiness? And will quitting my job bring me more happiness? Yes. So that was a long takeaway number 3, I believe.
We're still on the takeaways?
We're still on the value of reviewing your expenses with friends and family.
How many words do you think this side of the podcast said versus your side? What do you think the ratio of words said is?
Nobody wants to know that, Greg.
I don't know. 70-30?
Maybe. I'm thinking like 80-20. I don't know.
80% Mike, 20% me.
Yeah, sure.
Greg and Britta, thank you so much for coming on the show again. This was fun, and we look forward to having you back. Maybe mid-year. Maybe we'll do this twice a year now.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
I look forward to this being a top 10 episode of 2022.
Yeah.
No pressure, folks, but
Yeah, I hope we brought the same energy as we did the first time, and Yeah,
because if you didn't, we won't bring you back. Yeah. So we just go off what the people want. So
I'll make sure to grill you more, Maggie, next time.
Yeah, I think that's what
you were
people
too
want.
nice, Britta. You didn't give me a hard enough time about any of this.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a few questions that I was bouncing around. I was like, should I throw them out here?
Saw you looking down when I was going through the other category. I saw you eyeballing those and being like,
yeah. I mean, since you're asking for it, we'd like to ask you a few more questions about this treadmill.
Okay, go for it.
No, I'm just kidding.
And the clothing.
Now let's. I think we are good to wrap this one up. So
okay. Yes.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode.
If you have any thoughts or questions, we would always love to hear from you. And you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can always hit us up on Instagram.
All right. This was fun. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks,
fun.
Greg.
Hey, your cats really want to hang out with you. They're like, they've been patiently waiting for this entire podcast.
Yeah, it's cute. They're just like hanging.
I know. They're waiting for Britta, so that's all they want.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Everyone have a good night.
You guys.
Yeah, good
Thank
seeing you.
you.
Yeah,
right.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.